Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our conversation starter, where we're going to be discussing family businesses, how to sustain, how to improve, and how to give back. My name is Tracy Muller, and I'm Head of Advice and Philanthropy with Wealth Management, and I'm very excited to be here today and to be your host. I'm also exceptionally excited to be joined by some of my esteemed colleagues, some of our financial experts to my left. We've got two fiduciary specialists and we've got a senior financial planner from our business, individuals that have hands-on experience in advising you, our client. So we have Jonathan, a financial planner. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you, Tracy.
We've got Hanali, a fiduciary specialist, and we've got David, who is also a fiduciary specialist. But really the purpose of these conversation starters is to meet with you in a virtual way, but to try and meet with you in a more informal virtual environment and to have far richer and deeper conversations with you following our thought leadership webinars that we hold. And in particular, this conversation is on the back of the thought leadership webinar we held on the 15th of February. And if you recall, the purpose of that webinar, again, was with a family business theme, but it was really to look at setbacks, it was to look at business strategies, and it was to look in particular at business continuity. And we were joined by Connie Ferguson, who shared her real-life story of setbacks, in particular losing not only her business partner, but her best friend and her life partner as well, and the impact that has on one's life. To introduce or to position the topic in a bit more detail today around family businesses, as most of you will know, are a major contributor to the South African economy. But what's really interesting is that very few family businesses get past the second generation. And so what we want to do today is we want to really kind of drill into what are some of the reasons that are stopping family businesses from going on from a succession perspective. So we're going to be looking in the context of family businesses and how do we enable family businesses to pass on to next generations. We're going to be looking at trying to connect you to why is structuring important if you are running a family business. We're going to look at how you can transfer your wealth. We're also going to look at things like protecting your legacy and structuring your legacy. And importantly, how can you also give back? So if we look at and just to kind of get the thought process going, our team of financial experts sitting here are going to be sharing some of their family business financial planning tips that they've come across, as I said, in real life examples. Because the reality is every single financial decision we make impacts our ability to protect what is important to us and to achieve our goals and aspirations. And really that's why at Nedbank Private Wealth and Nedbank Financial Planning, we utilize our globally integrated advice-led approach to enable you to connect your financial decisions to your life goals and your aspirations. And you may be wondering, how does that happen practically? Well, practically, we provide specialist advice. We provide you with access to products, solutions, both across Nedbank as well as other top providers. But most importantly, it's about connecting you to personal and objective advice that's going to enable you to achieve not only your life goals and aspirations, but it's also going to enable you to make better or sound financial decisions, avoid financial disasters, and realize your giving aspirations. And in essence, that's what we refer to as connected wealth. So enough of that. I think let's just look at the usual housekeeping, and I'm glad to say that today we don't have very many housekeeping items that we have to go through. But just in terms of the format of the webinar today, as I said earlier, it's a conversation, so we would really like to keep it flowing as a conversation, really keep it informal. We'd really like you to be able to take away a couple of nuggets, even if you walk away from this session with one nugget of something that you did not realize pertaining to your family business or just generally to your financial affairs. So we're going to have a discussion. It's a panel discussion. I'm going to be bringing in my esteemed colleagues as we go through it. And I think also importantly, you've clicked on a link to this recording. What we'd really like to do is we'd like to invite you to share the link with your friends and families, or even your colleagues, your acquaintances, anybody who you think may be able to benefit from this rich discussion and conversation we're going to be having today. So really, I think if we jump straight into it now, and I mentioned earlier that family businesses are key contributors to the South African economy, but yet it's estimated that only about 1/3 of family businesses survive into the second generation. And I guess there's various reasons for that. So Haneli, maybe we can start with you and you can help us unpack what are some of those reasons.
Yeah, Tracy, so I must say it's quite concerning that there's so few family businesses actually continuing and transferring over generations. And like you mentioned, I mean, there could be different reasons for that depending on the different circumstances of those businesses. But I think for me, there are 3 reasons that really stand out that I would say is the main reasons for that. So number 1, lack of corporate governance rules. And when I say corporate governance rules, we're really referring to those rules that determine how the business is run. And then number 2 is really around the poor planning with transferring, and not only the ownership of the business, but also the management, so the succession really. And then number 3 is around insufficient business insurance being put in place. So when we're referring to business insurance, there could be a number of reasons for putting that insurance in place, and that would be necessary. But for example, it could be that there's a loss of a key contributor, and a cash influx is needed in the business. So Tracy, you can really see that the importance of having the right planning in place for those family businesses, and that planning, whether that's in a family constitution or not, that really forms part of your protection of business interests, which is a key part of wealth structuring and estate planning that we do.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you mention wealth structuring and estate planning, because those are they're kind of like key cornerstones of overall financial planning if we think about it. And if we look at wealth structuring and estate planning, I think there's different benefits for different people through doing proper estate planning and structuring. So David, maybe we can bring you in now, and you can maybe just unpack what are some of those benefits through doing proper structuring and estate planning.
Yes, Tracy, I mean, there are, I think, many benefits to estate planning, but I think the overarching benefit is that the planner has peace of mind that his assets will devolve upon his beneficiaries in the way that he intended. And I think any estate plan should also cater for the protection of minor beneficiaries or vulnerable family members, to take care of that during a stressful time. An estate plan should be flexible. It should not be cast in stone. So it's very important that an estate plan should be regularly reviewed to make sure that it expresses the wishes or the current wishes of the planner, that it's reflect the current or latest regulatory changes, and that it is best practice. I think a proper estate plan should also be seeking to cater for the ease of transition of assets and avoid delays that we often hear about, during the winding up process of estates. And it should also seek to minimize certain taxes.
Great, thanks, David. Yeah, I mean, I think, estate planning means different things to different people. That's the reality of it all. And Jonathan, you've been in the industry for quite some time. I mean, you've been advising clients for I think, almost a quarter of a century, which when you put it that way, but
that's a
again,
scary thought.
It's a bit of a scary thought, but it also talks to experience. And it means you've engaged with a lot of clients. So, in your experience, what does estate planning mean to a lot of the clients? Or what's kind of top of mind for them when you engage with your clients?
Tracy, I think when engaging with clients, it always comes down to what motivates you in life. If it's a family business, generally family is what motivates the person that one is effectively trying to assist. But then there are other people who want to make a mark, leave a legacy effectively, do good. And sometimes it's a combination of the two.
Okay, and when you mention now doing good, leaving a legacy, that kind of touches on something that I'm quite passionate about. And I should have actually given apologies earlier. So apologies I didn't. Clara unfortunately can't join us. She is a philanthropy specialist in our team, but she's fallen ill. And I guess that's just another reminder of how there are certain things that are in our control and certain things that aren't. So wishing her a speedy recovery, but we are going to now start turning and bringing in the philanthropy kind of element to it. And as I said, that's something that I'm really passionate about. But you mentioned leaving a legacy and, doing things in terms of making a difference. And I guess if we look at individuals, there are different things that will drive different people to how they want to make a difference and how they go about actually making a difference. I often think of the example of our Springbok captain, Siya Kolisi, who, as most of you will know, grew up in an impoverished environment, and he often shares the story of when he first started playing rugby. He was playing on a very thorny field. And what he's done is he's now taken that's kind of what's driven him to want to make a difference and want to give back, to the extent that him and his wife Rachel have now established the Kolisi Foundation, which is doing a huge amount of great work, and in particular to try and develop sport in the underprivileged communities. But it's also interesting because as a business we launch what we call the Giving Report. And the Giving Report actually looks at the spending kind of behaviours and trends of high net worth individuals in South Africa. So just a quick guess, not to put anyone on the spot, but what do you think were the top 3 kind of giving behaviours of high net? What kind of led people to want to give, the 3 motivations amongst the high net worth individuals that Giving Report revealed? Any ideas?
Leaving a legacy?
So, Tracy, maybe religious and cultural influences as well, I think, yeah.
I can't help but think there has to be a big financial reason as well, as in what are they getting through the process.
Okay, right. Well, all things that did come out of the report. But interestingly enough, the top 3, so 57% of the participants actually said that what motivates them is they want to give to a cause that they care about, something that they're passionate about. Next was the individuals said they want to make a difference. So if we look at Siya, wanting to make a difference, wanting to make sure that children in unprivileged environments can actually start becoming the next Springbok players of South Africa. And then the third most popular motivation was support a need that they've been made aware of. So if somebody gets made aware of a need, they want to support it. And I think we've got examples of this when we've seen the natural disasters we've had. As an example, the flooding in KZN, just using that as an example. When people get to hear of causes, it touches on that heartstring and they want to actually make that difference and they want to support that type of cause. So just interesting statistics coming through the
question
yes,
around that. So where does tax, where's the financial motivation come in? Where does that rank?
Very good question. Because tax as an incentive or a motivator for giving was actually very low on the actual scale, which is really interesting because it means people are giving because they want to make a difference. They're giving because it's close to them, as opposed to what are they going to your point earlier, Jonathan, what are they going to get out of it, and in particular from a tax perspective?
I suppose it's a benefit, but not being a main driver, that's very eye-opening actually.
Indeed, absolutely. And agreed though, it is a benefit, but not one of the key motivators, which is quite interesting. So it's also important, if we look at, so how do we help our clients give from a Nedbank Private Wealth and a Nedbank Financial Planning perspective? Because really what we like to do is we like to guide our clients through a philanthropic planning process. And we use the word philanthropy, or I just use the word philanthropic, but we often prefer to refer to philanthropy as giving, because to me it's more descriptive in terms of it's the act of what we're doing, the act of kindness. It's we giving. But be that as it may, it is known in the industry as philanthropy. But how do we help our clients? And when we're talking about clients, we're talking about individuals, Jonathan, that want to leave a legacy. We will help you plan and leave a legacy if that's how you would like to give. If you want to set up a bespoke structure, Haneli, David are the individuals that would help give advice around that structure. But if you're a corporate and you're looking at it from a corporate social investment perspective, we can also help advise you. Or if you're a non-profit organization, we have the expertise to guide you to achieving transformational social development and doing it in a sustainable way. So that's just introducing the topic that I'm really passionate about, philanthropy. But I think, if we go back to the webinar that we had, that thought leadership webinar, and, Connie really shared, as I said earlier, she shared a very personal story and journey that she had to go on, and a journey that many of us have to go on. The reality is we will all die at some stage, we just don't know when. And when you're looking at death and you're looking at it in the context of a business, any business, but in particular when you're looking at it in the context of a family business, the reality is that there are often key contributors, the individuals that are key to the sustainability and the succession of, well, not succession, but the running of that actual business. So if that happens, I think, it has a financial impact on the business, but perhaps you could just take us through a few examples in terms of the impact it would have, the loss of a key contributor actually has on a family business. Haneli.
Yeah, Tracy, I think in a nutshell, you mentioned it's quite a huge impact it can have on the business. And you mentioned that key contributors could be a number of persons within the business, but essentially it's those persons that help the business grow or contribute towards the growth of the business. And it can be partner or other key staff. But really, when we're looking at a loss of a key contributor, we see a number of things. And number one is really a loss. There could possibly be a loss in terms of key relationships. And that's where we're referring to the goodwill in the business, for example. It could also mean demotivated employees. It could mean that there's this public perception of instability in the business that's created. And all of those factors can then really lead to your weakened cash flow in the business. So another thing that a loss of a key contributor could also mean is difficulty with the servicing of debt and actually covering business overheads, which then means it could result in foreclosure by creditors. So that's quite a concern as well. Another impact it could have is around personal guarantees in respect of business liabilities, those actually being called up by security holders, which then has an impact not only on your business assets, but on your personal assets as well. So in these circumstances, these examples that I've given that could be applicable where you've got a loss of a key contributor, in those instances, it would really be a lifeline for the business to have access to a cash resource at that point in time. Thanks, Tracy.
Agreed. Thanks, Haneli. And I guess, you spoke about overheads, and I guess, just to kind of maybe contextualize it a little bit more, the reality is that when one can't cover one's overheads when you're running a business, it does have a ripple effect. So as an example, if salaries can't be paid because a key contributor's now passed away, there isn't sufficient liquidity to pay salaries, that has an impact on employees. But it doesn't stop with employees. It kind of goes a bit further. So yeah, I think that's a key point around trying to make sure that there is sufficient provision to make sure that you don't have that ripple effect, that in fact the business can continue, it can meet its overheads. So David, I mean, maybe you could just help us a little bit here as well, and maybe just help the audience, because, in the context of wanting to raise capital to allow for those debt commitments to continue, what are the options? Are there any options available?
Yes, Tracy, there are options. I think the logical one is the business must borrow more money. But the difficulty is with when you lose a key contributor, that business is in distress, and the banks may look very, with a fine-tooth comb as to whether they would want to grant credit to such a business. And even if they do, the additional debt will have to be serviced, and that could put additional strain on the business. The other alternative is, of course, a sale of assets. But as we know, if a business has to sell assets and it's a forced sale of assets, it might not get the price that it could normally get if it had time on its side. And also, as Handeli mentioned, you could have individuals that stood surety, and now it's being called upon them to stand good, and they also have to sell assets. So ideally, a forced sale of assets is not a good idea. I think the logical solution is a form of insurance. The benefit of it with insurance, it's predictable, and it provides ready cash for a business to ensure some form of sustainability.
Yeah, so I think if you look at insurance, it's almost like a pivotal tool that can be used in the event of unforeseen things happening.
Exactly.
And you can kind of protect against. So I think insurance plays a huge role. And Jonathan, that's right up your alley. If we're talking insurance in terms of business assurance. And so maybe we can just kind of, for the audience, just as a reminder, just go through what are the different types of insurance covers that one can take when you're looking at it from a business assurance perspective.
Sure, yeah. So basically you've got three main types. The first one is what we call contingent liability. And ultimately this covers any debt that a shareholder might have signed personal surety for with a financial institution. Then the next one would be what we call key person insurance, which ultimately is there to assist with the cash flow within the business if a key contributor has either passed away or become disabled. And then the last one deals with the actual ownership of the business, as in it provides the mechanism to fund a purchase of the business and also allows a cash injection into the deceased person's estate.
So really useful tools to use in the context, as you mentioned, in particular where there is the death of a key contributor.
100%.
But it reminds me of, there's that famous saying from, I think it's Benjamin Franklin, that says that there are two certainties, if I recall, two things that are certain in life. The one is death and the other is taxes. So we've spoken quite a bit about death, but now looking at the risk, the insurance, and those three options you've just been through now, presumably there will be taxes that are linked to them.
Yes, there are different tax outcomes effectively. If one looks from an income tax perspective, the premiums are not tax deductible. However, with SARS, if there's a specific outcome, they give the other way, so the benefits are paid out tax-free. And then from an estate duty perspective, generally any cover on your life enhances the value of your estate, so it would add to your estate duty in your individual capacity. But if there are certain provisions that are met in terms of structuring these policies, then the proceeds will be exempt from estate duty in your personal estate.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jonathan. And that's the kind of advice that you will give to clients. So you will explain and identify what is the particular need you're looking to insure, and based on once you've solved for that need, you'll take them through what are the tax implications, etc. And I think the reality is that when we're talking about taxes, taxes can become quite complex, can't they?
Yeah, they can.
But that's why individuals need financial experts such as yourself to guide them through that complexity.
They need to realize that they need us. Yeah, so effectively, if one looks at an example of contingent liability and key person insurance, there are basically four provisions that need to ideally be met, or requirements. So the first one is the policy affected by someone else other than the life insured? The second thing is, are the premiums paid for someone other than the life assured? The third one is, are the proceeds then payable to another entity outside of the deceased person's estate? And then the last one is, are these proceeds not payable to someone who is viewed as a family company or effectively a relative of the deceased.
Okay. So again, just highlighting why it's important to get financial expertise. Okay.
Something that I actually thought about, Tracy, in practice, oftentimes you may find a person is a bit averse to taking out new covers. So they say, well, I've got a personal policy in place. I'll just cede that to the bank for a specific requirement. And at the end of the day, if it doesn't comply with those provisions, it may actually compound your estate duty problem in your personal estate. So one needs to be careful and structure things correctly, effectively.
Absolutely agreed. Thanks, Jonathan. So we've been chatting quite a bit about the reliance a family business has on its key contributors. And but I think what's also important to understand is the different legal ownership options that one can select through which to operate a business. Because David, I mean, that has an impact, doesn't it, in terms of continuity and succession of a business, depending on which legal ownership option you select. So maybe you could just take us through that in a little bit more detail.
Absolutely. I think, Tracy, it's very important to determine where the business actually sits. Does it sit with the planner itself? Is it an asset in his estate? And perhaps I can just maybe pause there for a second and look at estate assets. Now, estate assets are generally dealt with in terms of a will. And for a will to be valid, it has to meet certain requirements. And essentially those would be to sign the will in the presence of two competent witnesses. Failure could mean that one will have to apply to a court for condonation of the will to be accepted, or alternatively, and even worse, the will is not accepted and the planner would then die intestate, which means that the assets will devolve according to a certain formula, not what the planner may have intended, or the testator. So, yeah, first of all, the will has to be valid. I think secondly, the will must be up to date to reflect the wishes of the planner correctly, and it has to be straightforward and simple, and most importantly, the third point, executable. So, often, planners or testators might deal with an asset and they married in community of property, so they can only deal with half the asset and they think they can bequeath the entire asset to a third party. So you can do that, but it becomes complicated. You need to structure that properly. Or alternatively, the planner intention was to distribute a certain asset to a beneficiary, but there's a liquidity shortfall in their estate, and the executive will then effectively have to sell the asset to cover the shortfall, not what the planner intended. So it is important then that the will must be correctly structured and up to date.
So the will I always like to think that a will becomes one's voice when we no longer have it, in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you want to make sure that it is, as you say, structured as you intended.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think your question then relating to the transferability of a business, of a family business, that very much depends on whether it's a sole proprietorship, and if it is, then of course all the assets of the business effectively belongs to the deceased and is dealt with in terms of his will.
But sorry, yeah? David, but I mean the business literally comes to an end if it's a sole prop, doesn't it?
Exactly.
So, talking to family businesses being a major contributor towards the economy and not getting to next generation, that may be one of the contributing factors as well, in a way, if people are running their businesses as a sole prop.
100%. You see, the executor does not have the expertise to carry on with the business. So invariably that business will either cease to exist or be sold by the executor if they can sell it. If it is in a partnership, the business, then the partnership also comes to an end on the death of one of the partners. And the business then also may cease to exist unless the partners may have entered into what they refer to a buy and sell agreement. And that effectively simply ensures that the deceased portion of the partnership assets are then sold to the remaining partner. I think if the business is held in either a company or a trust, there's some form of continuity, because ultimately the company will continue to operate, The business assets will belong to the company. So the only asset that really is dealt with in terms of the estate would either be the loan account from the testator, or maybe the shares in the company, which would then simply devolve upon his or her heirs. With a trust, similar in the sense that the trustees will continue with the running of the business. And so that ensures continuity, and yet again the only asset that could be dealt with in terms of the will of the deceased would be maybe any loan accounts that are due payable by the trust, or the other way around.
Yeah. So it's very important, I think, for business owners to understand what are the implications from a succession planning perspective linked to those different legal ownership options. Jonathan, do you want to?
I realized that while David was talking,
Yeah.
one of the things we didn't touch on was structuring of a buy and sell insurance correctly.
Yeah.
Because that obviously is, the agreement is there, but the funding mechanism is the cash flow that comes because you've got a policy in place. And it's important to bear in mind that if I'm taking out cover, it's got to be taken out on somebody's life, and he and I have to have a share in the same business. It has to be with the specific purpose of buying his shares out, and he cannot he cannot pay any premiums on his own cover. And if that is structured correctly, then again, free of estate duty. But the key here as well is to ensure that a proper business valuation for estate duty purposes is obtained in the process to determine what the cover values are that need to be put in place.
Just out of interest, how would you generally establish the value of a business?
Most businesses have accountants, and at the end of the day, it's exactly what will happen in the course of reporting a deceased estate to the master. The executor will ask for a business valuation for estate duty purposes. Sometimes accountants will charge for that valuation, but it's money well spent, because at the end of the day, you know exactly that it's not a thumbsuck, it's a specific market-related arm's length transaction. It's being determined in the proper manner.
Agreed. So just looking, I mean, we kind of touched on the different legal ownership options, and you took us through, you know, the different legal ownership options, what they mean from a succession planning perspective. But I guess there's also other considerations linked to determining which is going to be the most appropriate legal option to select through which to operate a business. Hanni, do you want to just take us through a couple of those?
Yes, Tracy.
Yeah.
So there's several fundamental considerations from estate and tax planning perspective. So, for example, does the legal ownership option provide protection for dependents? And when we say dependents, we generally refer to minors or younger persons, or persons with disabilities. Also, does it provide protection against government or creditor risks? Does it provide flexibility in terms of changes in circumstances or regulations or best practice over time?
Which is so important, because I mean, if we look at regulation and legislation and how often that changes, it's quite frequently, so it needs to have that flexibility.
Correct. And then also, what are the initial and ongoing tax costs related to that legal ownership option? As well as the tax implications. That's quite important to weigh that up against the other benefits of the legal ownership option. So if you can just look at an example, if you own a business in a private company, that doesn't necessarily provide protection for your dependents unless you make use of a trust which inherits the shares that you hold in your personal name. It also doesn't necessarily provide you with protection against seizure in the case of insolvency. Whereas, because of the fact that those shares are actually held in your personal name. Whereas if you look at owning that business in a trust, then we actually tick all the boxes from a protection perspective.
Yeah. And I guess one has to do a bit of a cost to benefit analysis if one does look at a trust. And And I mean, I guess the reality is one really needs to do a cost-to-benefit analysis on a lot of things that we do. And I think I may have mentioned it earlier. I think if we look at the benefits, what's a benefit to one person may not be a benefit to another. But again, I think that speaks to the importance of getting appropriate advice, and meeting with an advisor that's going to sit down to really understand what's important to you, our audience, and based on that to determine what is going to be the best ownership option that will suit your particular needs. So I think, we've spoken about, some of the things from a succession planning perspective. We've looked at the different legal ownership options. We've looked at the role that insurance plays from a business perspective and a business succession perspective. I think what's important just at this juncture as well is just to perhaps just bring the giving, the philanthropy discussion back into the discussion. And I think, if we look at philanthropy, again, like estate planning, philanthropy means different things to different people. We wear the lens of financial experts who do good, and that's the lens we wear when we look at philanthropy. So it's how can we help clients from a financial perspective, because we all know that people give in different ways, right? I mean, people give of their time, they give of their money, give of their resources. So our focus is really looking at how do we enable our clients to realize their giving aspirations from a financial perspective. But if we just look at, from a Nedbank Private Wealth perspective, what is and Nedbank Financial Planning, what is our philanthropy offering? Well, for us, it's a sum of all of its parts, because it's around making sure, again, speaking to the importance of getting advice, that there is that philanthropy advice. We spoke about different legal ownership options for businesses. It's the same when it comes to giving. And again, Haneli and David, that's something that you would do, help clients set up charitable trusts. It's also important from an investment perspective, as you know, and an advisory perspective in terms of trying to ensure the sustainability. So from a wealth management advice perspective, that advice is given to those structures. But also importantly, with all of the regulatory changes, it's important to be able to have someone that can attend to a lot of the compliance and admin side of it for you. So really, in a nutshell, that's what we do from a philanthropy perspective. We're able to offer you a holistic wealth management proposition to take care of most of your philanthropy needs. Just an interesting question. Does anybody know where the word philanthropy originated from?
I was trying to rack my brains.
Yeah.
Latin for?
Latin for?
Okay.
Good choice. Good. Any ideas?
Yeah. I think it might have Greek origins. Yeah.
Let's go with Greek.
I think so.
In fact, it's actually spot on. It has ancient Greek origins.
Okay. Yeah.
And it actually comes translated to English from a word called philanthropia. And if we look at what does that actually mean, it actually means love of humanity.
Interesting.
It is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so quite appropriately named, I think.
Yeah.
But I think what is important when we're talking about love of humanity, it's important if we bring things back to the South African context again, because as we all know, South Africa has one of the highest levels of inequality. So if we're talking about the love of humanity, specifically bringing it back to family businesses again, I think the business environment has evolved from establishing a business purely following a shareholder approach. Haneli, would you agree with that?
Definitely, Tracy. I think it goes more than just, it goes a bit further than just growing the business and ensuring profits for shareholders. And even going a step further than that, just providing for employees as well and making sure that they're also incentivized. So that further step, I think, is giving back to society in a way that the business would structure.
Absolutely. So I think, when one follows a stakeholder approach as opposed to the shareholder approach, it's looking at shareholders, yes. I mean, that's one of your kind of stakeholders, but as you've highlighted, it's employees. We see a lot of businesses that are doing good in the local communities. So it does have a far broader kind of aspect as well. So I think, just from a philanthropy perspective, and I see we are starting to run out of time. It's amazing how quickly time flies when you're having fun, but be that as it may. But maybe I could just leave the audience with a particular question, and that question is, what relationship do you wish to have with society that will enable you to create social value and impact through your day-to-day business practices? Just a question we're going to leave with you just to ponder. So as I said, I mean, we had a great amount of insights, and thank you for sharing those insights. But we are coming to the end of the webinar. So perhaps we can just quickly go around your last pearls of wisdom, last words of kind of you would like to leave with the audience.
Whenever I engage with the clients, I say, have a look at the risks. Not necessarily everything that we discussed today will apply to you, but have a look at the risks and look at what might have application in your specific circumstances, and then make an educated decision as to whether or not you're going to address them. Because at the end of the day, without information, you cannot make a decision. So go through the exercise and benefit through that process.
I think, yeah, Tracy, for me, it ties into that really, is really putting in the time and the effort to, from day one, structure your business ownership, number one. And number two, making sure that you've got that roadmap in place for your business to help it survive into future generations as well.
I think that you need to take care to structure your estate properly, and I think take proper advice.
Absolutely, David. I think that's the important thing, is to get appropriate advice. I mean, I was thinking about it, if our pipe bursts at home, we call in a plumber. The reality is that there are experts in every field, and none of us can be experts in all fields. So we do need to call in expert advice, and I'm really grateful again to each one of you as experts in your fields for sharing and having this conversation with me today. It's really been really great to engage, and I hope it's been very informative to our audience online. But to David's point, it speaks to the importance of receiving appropriate advice. If your pipe bursts, you're going to call a plumber. From a financial perspective, you need to seek appropriate financial advice. So as a reminder to the audience, at Nedbank Private Wealth and Nedbank Financial Planning, we really remain committed to providing you with globally integrated advice and connecting you to more ways to enable you to make better life decisions, avoid financial disasters, and to realize your giving aspirations. Planning for the succession of a family business, as we have discussed and as we've showcased in the discussion that we've had today, is one component of holistic wealth advice. There are many other components that one also needs to seek appropriate advice on. So how can we help you? We have a team of financial experts, as you can see, who work closely with you to connect your financial decisions to your financial goals, including business succession planning and aspirations. So just in closing, please, just again as a reminder, you're welcome to share the link to this recording with anybody that you think may benefit from it. If you would like to get more thought leadership insights, please visit our websites. We have previous webinars on our websites. We also have lots of communications and thought leadership articles, so please do visit our websites. But if you want to take charge of your financial future, connect with us today. Send an email to contact@nedbankprivatewealth.co.za. That should be coming up on your screen now with the subject line Family Businesses, and we will be in touch with you. Thank you again to each one of you for joining us, for taking time out of your day. I know it's not easy taking time out of your day, so thank you. So finally, but by no means least of all, thank you to each of you for connecting with us in this way and for joining this conversation. We look forward to connecting with you again soon. Until then, we wish you well. Thank you.
Thank you.
So West is actually a 97-year-old environmental organization. We focus on educating, advocating and acting for environmental and social justice, for climate action, to restore and protect biodiversity and to reduce pollution. So we also implement high impact environmental and conservation projects and programs all across South Africa. So the Blue Flag program is an international environmental certification program, and it's run by the Foundation for Environmental Education, and it's actually in 51 countries that participate in the program. And it's actually awarded to not only beaches, but also marinas and sustainable tourism boat operators that are able to meet a specific set of environmental and sustainability criteria. So for a beach specifically, to qualify for Blue Flag status, you'll need to comply with 33 different criteria from 4 different coastal management themes. So that would be environmental education and information, environmental management, water quality, as well as safety and services. So in a nutshell, a Blue Flag beach must be clean, the ablutions and surrounding facilities must be well maintained, there should be appropriate safety measures in place, the bathing water should be safe, so regular monitoring is required, and the beach should be accessible for all. So, as it stands for the past season, which is season 2022-23, I'd say the majority are in the Western Cape, but we do have our beaches in the KZN. We have Rainkinyeni municipality, we have Kwadikuza municipality on the program, and we hope to grow the sites in KZN because it's a huge opportunity. I would say get involved in your local area, get involved with local environmental organizations and conservation organizations. See how you can assist them. I mean, we can't completely rely on the government for everything. So I would definitely encourage citizens to see how they can help and get involved. Town, it's a group on the KZN South Coast that it's a wonderful example of a community that came together to actively tackle issues and improve their beaches. And it's a community project for the community, by the community. And they formed a positive working relationship with the local municipality, which is Rainkinyeni. And it's really seen a huge improvement on the local beaches. It's restored pride in their local coastal spaces, and these type of relationships are going to be very important going forward. Long-term sustainability of our coastal sites.
Well, we actually also have a video about Tiny Town and how this community came together to make a difference for their environment. Let's take a look.
Towards the end of last year, a lot of the surfers that surf at the beaches couldn't even get from the car park to the beach and back to their vehicles.
They were filthy, there were chicken bones, ablution facilities were in decay.
The car parks were covered in glass and there was litter everywhere. Really started looking shocking on the south coast.
It degraded. It just slowly sort of got into a situation where things stopped working properly the way we wanted it to. People stopped coming, people started going elsewhere.
Tourism is what drives the south coast. We've got 14 beaches that are beautiful, that are big, that can house people, and we've had no tourists because generally been in a state of disrepair or just not looked after and neglected.
The idea of just raising it to a group, floating it to some of the companies down here, the locals, the community and that, and it just sparked utter wildfire from, we had painters, waterproofers, rotor tanks, plumbers, like at the drop of a hat. The momentum just took off.
We just changed the status quo from complaining and trying to complain about our municipality to embracing our municipality. And think about it, if you were a municipal worker and you've always got everyone saying negative things, and the next thing you got this whole team that just wants to work with you, build you up, you feel like a part of the family. You're going to do better, we're going to do better, everyone's going to do better.
As government, we do not have enough resources or enough money to do everything that we are supposed to do.
The job's been too big. Not one party could do that or dig it out by themselves. It's really this unitedness. Yeah, we maybe had some manpower, but we haven't had the equipment. So we've gone to the municipality, and I think between everyone, we've pulled off major jobs down here.
If we stand together as communities in unity, we can do anything. We can make any change. Tidy Towns has saved the South Coast. It hasn't been an easy year. It's been a lot of hard work, but people are buying new properties on the South Coast and our property values have increased. We've had a phenomenal season with lots of holiday makers down here and people just enjoying the beaches and having a really good time down here.
It's given us a sense of pride and a sense of belonging in our area. It's a reason to get up in the morning again because you're excited for your area and excited to see how this transformation has taken place.
Every citizen must look after the infrastructure. If we don't look after it, if we don't maintain it, we must own up. If we use that as our launch pad, we're not gonna go wrong, trust me.
Andean Reason. It's basically a two-man team. They're dealing with 300 vessels that are putting out 40 million hooks just in our economic exclusive zone, 70,000 trawl sets a year.
Of all the birds in the world, seabirds are considered the most endangered group of birds. Seabirds are attracted to two things. They are attracted to the bait that is used by some of the vessels, but fisheries also discard a lot of the unwanted parts of fish, and that is an incredible lure for seabirds.
And then when they come for the discards, they collide with the cables which are holding to the nets, and then they get broken wings. And then in pelagic long lining, they set up lines of baited hooks, and then as they come to steal the bait, they get caught on the hooks. My name is Reza Nyengera. I work in the Albatross Task Force. My main role is to work together with the fishermen in trying to reduce seabed breakage.
So albatrosses are, especially the iconic wandering albatross, is the king of the open ocean skies. It's the largest flighted bird in the world, 3.5 meter wingspan. They circumnavigate the Southern Ocean at least twice in 1 year. They spend a considerable amount of time out at sea. Once they fledge, they spend 5 to 6 years without even coming back to land before they start breeding.
Wow.
So they're very adapted to the open ocean, and they span a considerable amount of the globe. And that's why they're under threat, because they encounter lots of fishing vessels. Especially pelagic seabirds, like many marine top predators, play a significant role in mediating lower trophic organisms like fish and squid. So just like cetaceans, dolphins, predatory fish, they play that top predator role, but they also play a bottom-up role because they recycle a lot of the food they consume back into the oceans, into soluble nitrates and phosphates that then drive primary production again. And they also do a lot of that pooping on land, which also drives the local ecology on a lot of islands.
Yes.
Yeah. The Tory lines is probably the most successful, the bird scaring line. That's probably the most successful method to mitigate against what they call bycatch. So it's the mistaken mortalities, basically. It's not intentional. And that's basically when birds collide into the actual cables that bring in the haul, or also get hooked on baited hooks in longline fisheries. So those bird scaring lines basically keep the birds away from the impact zone. There's other mitigation measures like managing your offal. So there's a lot of waste that comes off these fishing boats, so managing that at the right time not to attract birds in. Setting your lines at night, because a lot of birds don't feed at night, but there are some. So there's a whole suite of sort of mitigation measures that you can implement. which the Albatross Task Force is doing to great success, actually. Between 2006 and 2007, they've managed to mitigate against 90% of all the seabird deaths in our South African exclusive economic zone, just by using those Tory lines. So they're really effective. Yeah. So the Albatross Task Force is actually not just in South Africa. So South Africa is one of the initial pilot projects. You now find them in Namibia, in South America, quite a few islands, and in West Africa. So the South African team are actually now sitting in Namibia, where all the different global partners are coming together to share experiences and that sort of thing. But you also get these broader scale regional fisheries management organizations that do coordinate management of fisheries between governments, basically setting different permit requirements, mitigation schemes, and that sort of thing. So there is a lot of coordination. It's not perfect. There's a lot of work to be done, especially in our open oceans, which aren't governed, but there is some work towards governing the open oceans beyond the EEZs, or the economic exclusive zones, as well. Certainly in South Africa, there are permit requirements to have bird scaring lines on. So there are many different fleets. So there's 6 different major commercial fleets that all, target different fish and have different fishing methods. So not all of them have the perfect permit requirements. We're still developing mitigation measures for some fleets. So it's a work in progress.